Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
Russia has a very long and rich history. It started with many different tribes called the East Slavs. In the year 862, the first state, Kievan Rus, began. Prince Oleg united these lands, and Christianity became the main religion in 988. Later, the Mongol invasion broke this first state. But then a new city, Moscow, became strong. Ivan the Great helped bring many Russian lands together. Ivan the Terrible then made Russia a tsardom. After a hard time called the Time of Troubles, the Romanov family began to rule in 1613. Great leaders like Peter the Great made Russia an empire. He opened Russia to Europe. Catherine the Great also made the empire bigger. Russia fought big wars, like against Napoleon, and became a very strong country. In 1917, the Russian Revolution changed everything. The Tsars left, and Lenin started the Soviet Union. Joseph Stalin led the country, and Russia won World War II. The Soviet Union then had a Cold War with America. In 1991, the Soviet Union ended. Today, Russia is a big country with a new story. 2. The first Russian state. The history of Russia starts with the East Slavs. These people lived across the lands that would become Russia. Their original home is thought to be near the Pripyat marshes. The East Slavs gradually settled Western Russia in two ways. One group went from Kiev in modern Ukraine towards Suzdal and Murom. Another moved from Polotsk in modern Belarus to Novgorod and Rostov. They slowly mixed with local Finnic and Baltic tribes. Around the mid-9th century, Scandinavian Norsemen arrived from the north. Known as Varangians or Vikings, they were both traders and warriors. They traveled along rivers from the Baltic Sea to the Black and Caspian Seas. According to old stories, leaders like Rurik were invited in the 860s to restore order in towns such as Novgorod. Their followers later moved south, taking control of Kiev. This led to the first East Slavic state, Kievan Rus. It formed in the 9th century along the Dnieper River. Kievan Rus controlled trade routes for furs, wax, and enslaved people between Scandinavia and the Byzantine Empire. By the end of the 10th century, the Varangian leaders had blended with the native Slavic people, also absorbing Greek Christian influences. A pivotal event was in 988 when Prince Vladimir I, a ruler of Kievan Rus, adopted Christianity for his people. He chose the Eastern Orthodox faith from the Byzantine Empire. This decision deeply mixed Byzantine, Slavic, and Scandinavian cultures, defining Russian culture for 1,000 years. Kievan Rus experienced a golden age, especially under Prince Yaroslav the Wise in the 11th century. The state had a strong economy, and its people achieved much in architecture and literature. Yaroslav also introduced the first code of laws, Russkaya Pravda. The church during this prosperous time was closely tied to the princes. However, this powerful state eventually weakened. Ruling princes often fought amongst themselves, causing internal divisions. Nomadic groups like the Kipchaks also attacked from the south, making many Slavs move to safer, forested regions. The final blow to Kiev Rus came with the Mongol invasion between 1237 and 1240. They destroyed many major cities, including Kiev. After this, Kiev Rus disintegrated. New regions like Vladimir Suzdal and the independent Novgorod Republic became important, laying the groundwork for the modern Russian nation. 3. Moscow's great power. After the Mongol invasion in the 13th century, the city of Moscow started to become very important. It grew from a small area to a powerful center. Moscow's leaders were smart. They worked with the Mongol rulers, also known as the Golden Horde, and became key agents for collecting taxes from other Russian lands. This special role helped Moscow gain strength and influence. By the end of the 15th century, many smaller states around Moscow joined with the Grand Duchy of Moscow, making it even stronger. A very important leader, Ivan III, known as Ivan the Great, took power during this time. He was key in uniting Russian lands and building the foundation for a new national state. Ivan the Great expanded his territory greatly. He brought in cities like Novgorod and Tver, which were important areas. Under his rule, the Grand Duchy of Moscow tripled in size. Ivan the Great made a bold decision. He stopped paying the yearly tribute to the Mongol rulers. This act marked the true end of Mongol control over Russia, freeing the country after many years. An important event in 1480, a standoff at the Ugra River, is remembered as the moment Russia broke free from the Tatar yoke. After this, Moscow's rulers believed all Russian lands belonged to them. This period saw the rise of a powerful central ruler. The first Russian leader to officially take the title of Tsar was Ivan IV, famously known as Ivan the Terrible. He was crowned Tsar in 1547. Ivan the Terrible made the power of the Tsar absolute. He was known for being harsh, especially towards nobles who might oppose him, sometimes exiling or executing them. Despite his cruelty, he brought about many reforms. He created a new code of laws in 1550 and helped establish the first meeting of representatives, known as the Zemsky Sobor. He also reduced the power of the church and set up local self-government in some rural areas. Ivan the Terrible also created Russia's first regular army, the Streltsy. Under Ivan the Terrible, Russia began to expand greatly, particularly towards the east. He successfully added the Khanates of Kazan and Astrakhan to his growing state. These conquests brought a large Muslim Tatar population into Russia, making it a country with many different peoples and faiths. Russian expansion continued into the vast, cold lands of Siberia. Wealthy merchant families, like the Stroganovs, helped by hiring Russian Cossacks to explore and colonize these new territories. Although Ivan the Terrible's long war for control of the Baltic Sea was not successful, His rule firmly set Russia on a path of growth and increased its power on the world stage. 4. The Romanov family rules. After Ivan the Terrible, Russia entered a very difficult period, known as the Time of Troubles. Ivan's son, Fyodor I, died without children in 1598. This event caused a major crisis about who would rule next, leading to years of chaos and civil war across the country. Harsh weather, especially very cold summers from 1601 to 1603, destroyed crops and brought a severe famine. Many people suffered from hunger. Cities were badly damaged, and the population decreased. To make things worse, foreign armies, particularly from the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, saw Russia's weakness as an opportunity. They invaded, and at one point even occupied the capital city of Moscow. The country was in great disarray, with no clear ruler and constant fighting. In 1613, after much struggle and the expulsion of the foreign forces from Moscow, a group of Russian nobles and other people met. They chose a new leader, Michael Romanov. He was a young man and the son of Filaret, a powerful church leader. With Michael on the throne, the Romanov family began its long rule over Russia. This dynasty would govern the country for over 300 years, ending only in 1917. Their rise brought some stability after the Time of Troubles. Under the Romanov rulers, Russia continued to grow in size. During the 17th century, Russian explorers and settlers moved eastward into the vast lands of Siberia. They claimed new territories, pushing the country's borders further and further. By the end of the 1640s, Russia had expanded all the way to the Pacific Ocean, becoming one of the largest countries in the world. The famous explorer Semyon Dezhnev made a significant discovery, finding the strait that separates Asia from America. This expansion marked a new chapter for the Russian state. However, life for many ordinary Russian people became much harder during this era. The system of serfdom became official and widespread. This meant that Russian peasants, who were mostly farmers, were tied to the land they worked. They were not free to move and were almost like property of the landowners. If a serf tried to escape, they were considered a state fugitive, and strict laws made sure they were returned. Landowners held immense power over the serfs, and the government, along with the nobles, placed heavy taxes on them. Serfs were also forced to serve in the military when called upon. These harsh conditions naturally led to much unhappiness and several major peasant revolts against the government. In Moscow, there were riots over high taxes on basic goods like salt and copper. The most famous and largest uprising took place in 1667. It was led by a brave Cossack named Stenka Razin. Many serfs who had run away from their landlords, along with other free settlers, joined his rebellion. They traveled up the Volga River, encouraging other peasants to rise up and challenging the Tsar's authority by setting up their own forms of rule in the areas they controlled. The Tsar's army eventually moved to crush this large revolt in 1670. Stenka Razan's forces were defeated, and he was captured and executed the following year. These revolts showed the deep problems and discontent among the Russian people. 5. The Big Russian Empire. Chapter 5 begins with Peter the Great. He ruled from 1682 to 1725. Peter wanted Russia to be a modern European country. He saw that Russia was behind Western Europe in many ways. To change this, he reformed the army and built a new navy. He fought a long war, called the Great Northern War, against Sweden. This war, from 1700 to 1721, gave Russia access to the Baltic Sea. This was very important for trade and contact with Europe. In 1703, Peter started building a new capital city by the Baltic Sea. He named it St. Petersburg. It was a planned city, built in a European style, and became Russia's window to Europe. In 1721, after his victories, Peter changed the name of the country from the Tsardom of Russia to the Russian Empire. He became the first Russian emperor. He also changed the government, making it more like European states. He created a Senate to help him rule, and brought the Orthodox Church under state control. Peter the Great made Russia a strong European power. After Peter, Russia was ruled by several leaders. Then Catherine the Great came to power in 1762. She was a German princess but became the Empress of Russia. Catherine continued Peter's work of making Russia a modern country. She believed in new ideas from Europe, like education and science. She expanded the empire greatly. Russia fought 2 successful wars against the Ottoman Empire, taking land and reaching the Black Sea. In 1783, Russia annexed Crimea. Catherine also took parts of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, moving Russia's borders further west into Central Europe. Under her, Russia became an even greater power. After Catherine, her grandson Alexander I became emperor. Russia faced a big challenge from Napoleon Bonaparte, the French emperor. In 1812, Napoleon invaded Russia with a very large army. The Russian army used clever tactics, like retreating and burning food, to weaken Napoleon's forces. This was called a scorched earth policy. A major battle happened at Borodino, which was very costly for both sides. Napoleon reached Moscow, but the city was burned, and he could not stay there for winter. His army suffered greatly from cold, hunger, and attacks. Napoleon's army had to retreat from Russia. Russian troops chased them across Europe. They defeated Napoleon's army and finally captured Paris in 1814. This victory showed the world that Russia was a powerful country. Emperor Alexander I helped decide the new map of Europe at the Congress of Vienna in 1815. Russia was now a leading force in Europe. 6. Big changes for Russia. In the middle of the 19th century, Russia was a large empire, but it was falling behind other European powers. Russia fought a war called the Crimean War against Britain, France, and the Ottoman Empire. Russia lost this war. This defeat showed that Russia's army was old, its technology was not modern, and its government was not efficient. The war caused many problems and made Russian leaders realize that big changes were needed for the country to stay strong. After the war, Alexander II became the new Tsar in 1855. He understood that Russia had many deep issues. The most serious problem was serfdom. Millions of people in Russia were serfs, living like property tied to the land and their owners. They had no freedom to move or to choose their own lives, which held back Russia's economy and social progress. Tsar Alexander II wanted to modernize Russia. In 1861, he made a very important decision. He freed all the serfs. This was called the Emancipation Reform, and it was one of the biggest changes in Russian history. Millions of people became free. However, gaining land was still a challenge for the freed peasants. They had to buy land from their former landlords with government loans, which meant years of payments. The land was often managed by the village community, or mir. Tsar Alexander II also introduced other reforms. He changed the judicial system to be fairer and created new local governments called zemstvos. He also made changes to the military. These reforms aimed to update Russia and solve many of its problems. However, not everyone believed these changes were enough. New ideas about revolution began to spread. Groups called nihilists and populists wanted much bigger changes, even a complete overthrow of the old system. They believed Russia should follow its own unique path, different from Europe. Some of these revolutionaries thought that peaceful reform was too slow. They started to use violence, including terrorism, to try and force the government to change. They often targeted high-ranking officials. Tsar Alexander II continued to pursue reforms, but the revolutionary movements became stronger and more dangerous. After several attacks on his life, Tsar Alexander II was killed by anarchists in 1881. This happened on the very day he had agreed to further parliamentary reforms. His assassination showed the deep unrest and desire for radical change in Russia. 7. The Last Tsar and the Revolution. Nicholas II was the last Tsar of Russia. During his time, many people in Russia were unhappy. New groups with different ideas about how the country should be run became strong. Some, like the liberals, wanted a parliament and more freedom. Others, like the Bolsheviks, wanted a complete change through revolution. Vladimir Lenin was a key leader of the Bolsheviks. In 1904, Russia fought a war with Japan over land in the Far East. Russia lost this war badly. This defeat made people angry and showed that the Tsar's government was weak. In January 1905, an event called Bloody Sunday happened. People marched peacefully to the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg to ask for better lives. But soldiers shot at them, killing many. This led to a large uprising, the 1905 Revolution. The Tsar then created a parliament called the Duma, but he still held most of his power. This did not stop the growing calls for change. The situation grew much worse when the First World War started in 1914. Russia joined the war against Germany and Austria-Hungary. The war was extremely difficult for Russia. Millions of Russian soldiers died or were wounded, and the army was often poorly supplied. At home, there was not enough food or fuel for the people. Factories struggled, and people became very poor and unhappy. Many Russians lost faith in Tsar Nicholas II and his government, which seemed unable to manage the country or the war effort. In March 1917, big protests and strikes began in the capital city, Petrograd. Soldiers joined the workers, and the government lost control. Tsar Nicholas II was forced to give up his power after more than 300 years of Romanov rule. This event is known as the February Revolution. A new temporary government took over, but it could not solve Russia's deep problems, especially the war. Soon, Vladimir Lenin returned to Russia from exile. His radical Bolshevik party quickly gained more support among the people. In November 1917, the Bolsheviks, with the support of armed workers and soldiers, took control of the government by force. This second major event was the October Revolution. It marked the complete end of the Tsars in Russia. Lenin and the Bolsheviks quickly made peace with Germany by signing the harsh Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in 1918, giving up much Russian land. They then began to establish a new kind of government, a communist one, fundamentally changing Russia's future. 8. A new kind of country. After the revolution, a new country was formed. In December 1922, the Soviet Union was created. It brought together several republics, like Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus, under one Communist Party rule, with its center in Moscow. Joseph Stalin became the new leader. He held great power and was very cruel. He forced big changes in industry and farming. Many people suffered and died under his rule, especially in the 1930s, due to famines and purges where thousands were executed or sent to labor camps called gulags. The Soviet Union played a key role in World War II, which started for them in 1941. They fought against Nazi Germany and won, but many millions of Soviet people died, and the country faced huge damage. After the war, the Soviet Union entered a long period called the Cold War with America. They were two superpowers with nuclear weapons, and both built alliances, like the Warsaw Pact for the Soviet Union. This was a time of tension, but they avoided direct war and also signed treaties to control nuclear weapons. In the late 1980s, Mikhail Gorbachev tried to reform the country with new policies. But these changes weakened the government, and in December 1991, the Soviet Union officially ended. Russia became an independent country again, now called the Russian Federation. Since 2000, Vladimir Putin has been a main leader, serving as president. Modern Russia has grown stronger economically, but has also faced international issues, including sanctions after events like the annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. What do you think was the biggest change for Russia after the Soviet Union ended?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.